Hi, everybody. Leo Babauta here from Zen Habits. So glad to be here with all of you. And in this video, we're going to talk about a topic that can be fraught because it is a sticky topic for some people. But we're going to try anyway, and that's the idea of healthy weight loss. Um, and so I'll tell you a little bit about why I'm talking about it, and then how I'm practicing with it right now, and some very fundamental strategies that I find to be helpful, and then some other tips that I think are also helpful. But before that, let's talk about why it's fraught. And so, if you are someone who has for example, an eating disorder or some real difficulties around eating and food and weight loss and your body image, if this becomes a very complicated and difficult and even dangerous issue for you, this might not be the video for you. I'm not going to talk about anything too extreme. I'm really trying to talk about some fundamentals and some tips and some healthy ways to do this. But for some people, it really helps to get some help with whatever you're going through. So, again, if you have an eating disorder, I would say, as opposed to trying to watch this video and lose a bunch of weight, I would say get some help, therapy or a group counseling kind of thing, something where you'll be helped with the underlying issues, because it's not about weight loss or even food. It's really about our relationship to ourselves, and some things that we might have gone through when we were younger. So these are things that I can't address in a YouTube video. So I think that's one thing to say. I also just want to say, I never encourage anyone to do anything too drastic. This is not about trying to fit some kind of image of what you see on social media or in movies or magazines. Like, this is not about trying to meet up to these kinds of beauty standards. I think they're unhealthy and unhelpful. This is really just about how do we get ourselves into a healthy kind of lifestyle? How do I get myself to a healthy kind of shape? Not body shape, but like in terms of I'm in a good shape for life. I can take on life, and so forth. So I really don't have any attachment to how your body looks, and I really encourage you not to focus on looks at all. Um, Really, this is trying to be healthy for life, right? So we're aiming to age into go into our older age feeling good about ourselves, free as possible of diseases, or if we have diseases, trying to meet those in a really healthy way. So that's what we're looking for here. And weight loss can be a thing that really helps with a lot of that. Um, I will kind of refine that a little bit. But another thing to say is, we're not also trying to restrict ourselves from certain foods. When we start to get into I can't eat this and I have to only eat this, it starts to get into kind of disordered eating, and we don't really want that. We don't want to feed into that part of our minds that are gets really compulsive. And so if you notice that, what we really want to do is practice some compassion, so back off of that, trying to get too perfect. We want really a healthy kind of mindset towards all of this. And so, what is a healthy mindset? A healthy mindset is that I am trying to make myself healthy for life. I'm trying to um, take on my health in a way that feels responsible and good. It feels good in my body, feels good in my heart. This is not something where I'm trying to get to an image of how I should be, but really trying to love myself. I'm nourishing myself with food. I'm nourishing myself with movement and exercise and physical activity. I'm making myself feel strong and not about any kind of perfection. I also want to say, as we get started, if you have some kind of health condition, this video will not be able to address that. If you have diabetes, if you have heart disease, if you have lupus or some kind of other autoimmune disease, if you have a gut condition, this video is not going to address that. And in fact, it might even be totally against what you actually need. So this is for people who are either free of those kinds of medical conditions or know how to modify whatever advice I have here for their particular condition. They have some doctors or nutritionalists who've given them some good advice, and they can prioritize that advice over anything you hear in this video. Okay, so before we get into strategies, I want to talk about a healthy approach. But even before that, I want to talk about weight loss, that term. So actually, I think weight is not really, I think it's a misleading metric. So let's say I weigh, 180 pounds, whatever that is in kilos, right? So there's a number, but what does that mean? Like we have in our heads some kind of meaning that we make about that, but 180 pounds is not inherently good or bad. Now, maybe I'm carrying some extra weight, um, and that makes it harder for me to like run or climb or do physical activities. So extra weight can have extra like impact on your joints. And so in that case, if you're at a heavier weight, then you might want to like uh, you know take it easy on the things that are going to be too high impact. But in general, weight is not really the most important metric. Like what we might look for in terms of a healthy approach is like, is the extra weight that I'm carrying going to lead to worse health outcomes? And I would say extra weight in and of itself, we don't really know. For example, if I worked out really hard and I gained, you know, 15 pounds of muscle, which would be an incredible accomplishment, right? Like I'm stronger and I can lift more weight. And yes, that extra weight might make it harder for me to do rock climbing because I have 15 more pounds to carry up. So that's one thing. But also, um, that extra weight might be good for whatever sport I'm doing, and it might actually be good for, carrying things in my daily life. And so extra muscle weight is not actually necessarily like worse for your health. In fact, I would say usually it's better to some extent, right? Maybe too much muscle might be harmful at some point, but for the most part, putting on 10, 15 pounds of muscle weight is not going to hurt your health. And so what we're really looking at is like, do we have excess body fat? That's the weight that we actually care about. So weight in general um, is is not necessarily the most important thing. Is like, do I have too much body fat, especially around the middle, right? Like might have some body fat on my like on my back or on my legs, but around my midsection, that's where it can actually lead to worse health over time. Like not right now, but like over the next couple of decades, right? And so what we're really looking for is fat loss. Now, I don't like to use that term as much because fat becomes this like negative thing. It's like, oh, I have this fat on me and it's gross and I need to get rid of it. And I don't think that's a healthy approach either. What we really want to look for is like, fat is not bad. We all have fat. Every single one of us. It doesn't matter how lean you are. We all have fat. And in fact, having a little bit extra fat sometimes is maybe even healthier for some people in some conditions. I would say, for example, I think women should have more body fat than men, and I think that could affect their hormone levels, affect their menstruation cycles. Menstruation. I getting that word mixed up, but you know what I mean, right? And so having really low body fat actually isn't always the healthiest thing. And that's not just for women. I think for men too, when you get to really low body fat, it affects your immune system. And so having some fat is actually not a bad thing. We don't want to fat shame it. And sometimes when we have a little bit of excess fat, it's not really about health. We just think it looks bad. We think we're bad people and we're ugly or whatever. And I think that's unhealthy. And so we want to detach the word fat from like bad and ugly and gross and all of these kinds of things. What we're really doing is trying to shed whatever excess fat we have, fat weight, so that we don't have to have negative health outcomes. Because if I have too much fat around my midsection, for example, it could lead to diabetes and heart disease and things like that. So what we're looking to do is to maintain a healthy level of fat, which isn't zero, right? We want some. And in fact, there's a range, and it might even be different for you and the health, the stage of life you're in and the health conditions you're facing. And so we don't need to try and hit a perfect target. We definitely don't want to lose body fat so that we have the perfect abs or perfect like physique. There are some people for whom that's their goal, and fine, this is not the video for you. Okay, so weight loss is a bit weird, right? It's because we're not talking about excess muscle. We're talking about excess fat that we would like to slowly start to shed. Weight in and of itself is fat and muscle, but also bone and sinew and other kinds of things like that, and water. And these are, water actually fluctuates. You might lose a bunch of water and your weight's gone down by like 2 pounds, even 5 pounds in 1 or 2 days. It's crazy how much weight we can lose when we shed water. But then we drink water and get hydrated and we can like our weight goes way back up. And so I think that's the problem with using weight as a metric is that often actually water is the thing that's moving the needle on the scale more than anything else. So how do we deal with all of this in a healthy way? Well, what we're looking for is I do believe if we can maintain our lean body mass is bone, muscle, like tendons and sinew, things like that. If we can maintain our lean body mass while losing some of the body fat mass, over time, we will be moving towards a healthier body weight or body composition for most people. Now, if you're already at a low body fat, I would say you don't need to watch this video. Video is not for you. This is for those of us who have some excess body fat. And the way we might know is like, do I have some excess body fat around my midsection? And I don't mean just like a tiny little like half inch of body fat. I mean like, can I squeeze a good chunk of it, right? And that's not necessarily like, oh, that's gross or bad, but it's like, okay, I could probably stand to lose a little bit and get a little leaner. And this is really for long-term health, long-term aging. So, and we don't need to get super lean, okay? We just want to like say like, do I have some excess? Okay, I could lose a little bit. And the way we want to do that is maintain our lean body mass while shedding the body fat mass. And to do that, there are some very fundamental strategies for that. And I'm going to share them here, and then I'll share some tips. So to do that, there are a couple of things. First of all, to lose any kind of weight over time, we want to be in a caloric deficit. What that means is we are burning more through our daily activities and just being alive than we're taking in. If we are taking in more, then we're going to be adding weight. And that weight might be muscle if we're working out, and very often it's fat. If we have excess calories, let's say I'm eating 1,000 more calories than I'm actually burning off, I will be putting on fat over time. And it's not like all that one day, but like it gets built up over time. And so let's say I'm generally on average in an excess for the course of a year, I might put on 5, 10 pounds of fat with some muscle as well, mostly fat. And so that's totally fine. That's actually the case for me recently is, for the first, I would say 7, 8 months of this year, I actually was in a caloric surplus. I wasn't exercising as much. I was just eating whatever, and I ended up in a caloric surplus. And I did put on, I would say, probably 8 pounds, mostly fat. And that happens, especially if I take my eyes off of the ball with fitness and health. It happens. And so right now, I'm now in a caloric deficit and taking some of that fat off slowly. Now, how much of a deficit do we want? We want something that is aimed at losing our weight slowly. If we drop weight too quickly, there's a couple of problems. One is that it's not sustainable. If you are losing weight let's say you're losing 3 pounds a week, right? First of all, you're not going to be able to keep that up forever. And at some point, because you're in such a deficit, you are very likely to rebound. This is what causes a lot of rebound, is that people try and lose fat or weight too aggressively. So we want to aim for a really slow amount. And so what I would say is um, we're looking at like 1% or less of your body weight per week. So for me, if I'm 180 pounds, again, translate this into kilograms. I'm sorry for those of you who are international. But if you're 180 pounds, 1% of that is 1.8 pounds. We want to do that per week. Now, that is too aggressive actually for me. So what I'm going to aim for is zero point 0.5. And I would say 1.8, 1% is the maximum that we want to aim for if you have a lot of body weight. If you're like, let's say 250 pounds and you want to lose a lot over time, then 1% is doable. But as you get a little bit leaner, or, like 1% is going to be too aggressive. So for me, I'm going to aim for 0.5% of my body weight. So I'm going to take half of that 1%. So instead of 1.8 pounds per week, 0.9 pounds per week is my goal. Something in that range. Now, hitting that exactly is kind of ridiculous. Our bodies, we're not going to be that exact. So somewhere in that range of, like, for me, at the most, a pound a week to half a pound. Somewhere in that range is going to be slow and sustainable. Now, if I lost a pound and a half, actually in the first week I might lose 2 pounds or even 3 pounds. That's because a lot of water weight starts to come off when I start to go into a deficit. But after a while, that'll slow down to about a pound a week after the first week or two. That's going to slow down. And that's what we're aiming for, is about, for someone like me, a pound a week. For someone who is even leaner than me, half a pound a week is even better. And for someone who has a lot more body fat to take off, let's say you're in the 30% body fat range, something like that, if you're in the obese category, then I would say you can go even higher, where you're doing a pound and a half, even 2 pounds a week, sometimes even more if you're really on the heavier side. So we want to just aim for something that is appropriate for our body fat level, but also sustainable. The other problem with losing too aggressively, which people are like, I just want to lose it all right now. The other problem is that you will lose some of that lean body mass that we're trying to preserve. So by aiming for that 1% to 0.5% of your body mass, we're aiming for that. What we can do is preserve our lean body mass even better. So be in a caloric deficit. What I want you to do is to search for TDEE calculator in Google, TDEE calculator, and you can just enter in your numbers. Here's my age, my height, my weight, and my gender, and my exercise level. And it will give you a rough estimate. So for me, let's say the rough estimate is 2,600 calories. Well, what I'm going to do there is I'm going to start by subtracting 500. 500 calories from that is 2,100. So that's my target, 2,100 calories a day. And if I can eat around 2,100 calories a day, I will lose somewhere in the realm of 0.9, 1 pound a week. Now that's rough because my body is not going to conform to the numbers in that calculator. And so what we'll do is we're going to adjust that over time. So that's the first thing is be in a caloric deficit and do it slowly. That's the thing that we're going to say. So next is to preserve lean body mass, we want to increase or have a decently high um, we want to have a decently high protein level, not bodybuilder level where you're having 200 grams a day. But for most people, that's going to be, for most men, it's going to be over 100 grams of protein a day. So for me, what I'm aiming for actually is close to, um, there's different ways to calculate it, but one thing you can say is somewhere that's like zero point 0.8 or zero point 0.9 grams of protein for every pound of body weight. That's one way to calculate. There are actually better ways where you use your lean body mass. But for me, what that means is I'm aiming for about 170 grams of protein a day. That is high. It is not crazy high. There are people who double that. So I'm aiming for 170. If I hit 150, I'm really happy. If I hit 130, still good. Okay, so there's a range here, but I'm aiming for 170. And what that means is I'm eating a lot of protein-rich meals every day. So right, for me as a vegan, right now I'm eating a lot of tofu with some greens and a little bit of potatoes. And then I drink some shakes, some 2 protein shakes a day for 100 grams of 100 grams of the protein shakes, which means 50 grams of protein from the shakes, and then another 120 grams, mostly from tofu actually, and some edamame. So that's where I'm getting my protein. And the way you do this is you go to chronometer.com and you actually just enter in foods you want to eat. So you start to make a meal plan that will hit the calorie target you have and the protein target. That's all we care about. Calorie target and protein target. Now, there are people who are like, oh, you need to have this level of fat, this level of carbs. I don't care about that. You want to have a decent number of protein grams and a decent calorie deficit. And if you can hit those two, you're great. So what I do is I go on there and I plan out what do my meals look like? And I put in everything like my coffee creamer. If I'm going to drink a beer at night, I'll put that in there. Right now I'm not doing alcohol, so there's no beer. But I do protein shakes, I do my meals, I do some snacks, and it's all on there. And I know how many calories I'm taking in and what my protein target is. Now, if I mess that up a little bit, that's okay, but that's what I'm shooting for. And that for me gives me basically a blueprint that I'm trying to hit most days out of the week. Now, a day or two out of the week, I let myself kind of deviate from that for about half the day, right? So the first half, I follow the plan. Maybe at the end of the day, I'm like, I'll have a beer, I'll have some ice cream, totally fine. So 1 or 2 days out of the week, I let myself deviate for about half the day. And so for me, that feels sustainable. But that means that for 5 or 6 days out of the week, I'm actually hitting that blueprint for much of the day, not deviating too much. It helps to have a food scale to see if you're actually hitting that because it's easy to underestimate how many calories are in something, but you don't have to weigh every single thing every single day. I like to do that for a few days so that I know, basically what that looks like. If I want to have 100 grams of baked tofu, this is the size of it, right? It's about this big, and so I just kind of get to the point where I can eyeball every portion. Okay, so that's food. Calorie deficit that is reasonable, and then high protein. Those things will go a long way to what we're shooting for, but there's one more thing, which is strength training. If you do some kind of strength training, it will retain your muscle mass that you already have. And in fact, for some of you who don't really work out much, you might actually gain muscle mass while losing fat, which is kind of the holy grail called body recomposition. So for you, I would say, for anybody, I would say, do some kind of strength training. It could be body weight stuff if you're just new to it, where you're doing some push-ups, some body weight squats, pull-ups if you can, or chin-ups. But if you can't, that's totally fine. Do some lunges. If you can do some body weight exercises like that 2 or 3 times a week, you will retain the muscle that you already have. Now, for others who are a little bit fitter, who've been doing some exercises for a while, I would suggest weight training. You don't have to do high volume. You don't have to do so that you're super exhausted and sore, but you do want to slowly build up to the point where you are lifting about as hard as you can, something kind of intense, 95% of what you can actually lift. Try and do that, but lower volume. So for those of you who do lift, let's say you do 3 days a week, you do squat, bench, and chin-ups, right? So it's just something simple like that. And you want to do 2 or 3 sets of those, but lower volume. So somewhere around 5 reps-ish, 4 to 7 reps, 3 to 7 reps. And you want to do those as heavy as you can to be able to complete all of those reps and sets. And what that means is you will retain your muscle. High protein and strength training, you will retain your muscle. Okay, some bonuses. If you get in a bunch of steps, you will increase your fat loss. So what that means is shoot for 8,000, 10,000 steps a day. For some of you, maybe you can go for 12,000. We don't need to go higher than that. If you have a trouble hitting 8,000, that's fine. Try and hit 7,000. But we want to shoot for somewhere in that range most days of the week. You don't have to hit that every single day. And if your legs are tired, if your body's tired, take a rest day. Listen to your body. But we want to be doing strength training 2 or 3 days a week. And then most days of the week, we want to add in some kind of walking. If you rather bike, that's totally fine. If you like to swim, that's fine. If you want to play soccer, that's also fine. Something active, but not too heavy. We don't want to be running super hard. If you're already a runner and you want to run, that's fine, but do light running. We don't want to do heavy training and weightlifting and a caloric deficit at the same time. That's going to lead to some kind of injury or burnout. So light kind of cardio or movement, any kind of movement is good. I like walking. So be walking every day. You don't have to go super hard. Do some kind of strength training 2 or 3 times a week, and then be in that caloric deficit that's reasonable at a high protein. If you do that strategy, what I've just laid out for you, you'll be losing fat on a sustainable basis, and it will lead, and you'll be keeping your muscle mass as well. So that's those are the foundational strategies. I've given you all the tools you need. These are the tools. If you do those, you will get it. And it doesn't really matter what kind of strength training. If you're doing something that works out your body, works those muscles out and tries to push them a little bit, you will be retaining that muscle. A little bit of muscle loss is okay, so we're not like stressing about that. I'm going to give you a couple more tips before we close, and one of them is we want to make some slow changes. So what I gave you is what to shoot for. But if you only do 100-calorie deficit for a week or two, that's okay. If you eat some, things that are like not what you want and you're missing the target, that's okay. What we want to do is start to slowly move towards what I just described. What I gave you is the target to shoot for, but eventually you can get there. If you can't work out 2 or 3 times a week, that's okay. Work out once a week and do it light. And then you can start to slowly build up. If you can't hit that kind of protein right away, that's okay. Start at 80 grams of protein and then slowly start to work in more. I didn't get there to 170 right away. I had to kind of iterate over time. If you mess up on the holidays or someone's birthday, or you go out and just like put that behind you. We don't want to stress about messing up. We don't want to stress about getting it perfect. We want to let go of all of that stress. So you didn't do great? Fine. Start again today. Try and hit your targets. If you're struggling because you usually eat a certain way, and changing to this perfect diet that you've planned out on Chronometer is really hard, take your time. Let yourself have the Starbucks frappe or whatever it is that you have to have every day. But slowly start to shift. And I would say the next tip is, if you can slowly cut out the the calories that you drink, that will go a long way. So for example, if you do have those coffee drinks, if you have those boba teas, if you have sodas, if you have a lot of alcohol, slowly cutting those out, slowly starting to eliminate them, slowly, gradually over time, you will be reducing a lot of calories over time. If you slowly cut out or reduce fried foods, that will also go a long way. So fried foods are not evil. We don't want to say I can't ever eat fried foods, but if you're eating a lot of fried foods right now, you're eating fried chicken, you're eating French fries, you're eating all that kind of stuff, slowly start to replace those with less fried stuff. You will be cutting out a ton of calories because fried foods are just loaded with calories. If you slowly cut from fattier types of foods to leaner stuff, we don't want to go low fat, but if you're just if you eat really fatty meats, for example, and you start to eat leaner meats and you're like, I'm eating fish now and some chicken, great. Not fried chicken, but some baked chicken, right? So we're starting to eat some leaner stuff, then that's great. If you want to eat steak, fine. I'm not really here to judge you, but taking out a little bit of the fat from that, is a good idea. If you're putting butter on the steak, maybe reducing some of that sometimes. But if you do put butter, great, just put it into Chronometer so that you're accounting for it. Sweets and processed foods will be another one to slowly reduce, start to replace with whole foods. So right now I'm eating whole potatoes, whole tofu, which is slightly processed, but it's mostly just a whole food. And then I eat some greens, I eat some carrots, I eat some hummus, which is slightly processed. And then I do eat processed, protein shakes, basically. So there's some processed stuff in there, but I'm not eating the breads and pastas and sweets and fried stuff that I used to eat. And I do, indulge in those a little bit, but I don't eat them every day. And I slowly started to work my way towards that. So that's what I would say in terms of adherence and tips. Okay, that's what I've got for you. Hopefully this has helped. It's giving you some really basic strategy, foundational stuff, some tactics. But what we really want is I am doing this for my long-term health, to live my best life, not to look like a supermodel or a superhero. Okay, my friends, like this video if you found it helpful. If you have an objection or a tip or something like that that's worked for you, or a question, put it into the comments. I would really love that. Otherwise, wishing you the best of the day. Subscribe if you can. I would really love that. It really helps me. Share this with someone else who could use this. But otherwise, have an amazing day. I'll talk to you all later.